What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, and welcome into the first BC Lions post-game recap show. I'll be joined momentarily by Blake, who will be joining me, as always, after every BC Lions game once again this season. The BC Lions are coming off a 26-22 victory over the Winnipeg Bluebombers, moving to 2-1 on the 2024 season. And what a great game that was that we were able to watch on a Friday night, folks. And before we get going here tonight, everyone that's tuning in here on the channel, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube, we appreciate you guys for tuning in first and foremost. But can you guys head over to the YouTube channel and try to push us over 200 subscribers here tonight on the channel? I believe we were at 191 before we went live on the channel here tonight. We have about 10 people tuning in as of right now, so if we could get up to around 200, that would be fabulous. As always, for anybody that's tuning in on Twitter, we appreciate you guys so much supporting and following us on Twitter. If you guys aren't, follow us or head over to Instagram, follow us over there as well. Doing a ton of good stuff over there as well. But before we get going here tonight, like I mentioned, Blake will be joining me momentarily, just heading home from reffing. And Blake and I will get into a full game recap. We'll give you kind of what we liked from the game, what we disliked from the game. We'll give you guys our game balls, and we'll talk about a little bit more. Planning to do this for kind of anywhere between 40 to 60 minutes every post game after the Lions play this season. Blake and I did this through halfway through last season, and it was a ton of fun. Blake and I both had the mutual feeling of after a few Lions games this season, not doing it, we were kind of like, there's something missing. So we decided, why not? We have we have a little bit of spare time, a little bit of spare time on our hands. So why not jump back into the BC Lions post game show? I think it'll be a good time for us. And before we get going here tonight, for anybody that is following us on 13th Man Sports as well, this will kind of take place for my written articles over there on the website. As you guys know, I've been contributing for them now for probably a little bit over half a year now, doing some CFL, doing a little bit of youth sports, but I really want to try to focus my most of my article writing towards youth sports and stuff like that, and work my way up into writing for the CFL. So I'm going to stick to doing the power rankings once a month, so you can definitely still expect those from me. But as far as the BC Lions kind of recap articles, if you will, I'm going to treat these like that. So you still will be able to find them on the 13th Man Sports website and all that sort of stuff. So still follow them on Twitter, on Instagram. You'll be able to find our work on their website and all of their social media as well. So let's get into it, guys. The BC Lions move to 2-1 and make the Winnipeg Bluebombers winless at 0-3. Who would have had that? I was thinking a little bit before we went live of, it was kind of starting to look not so good for the Lions' favor there late in the fourth quarter. Wasn't sure how the game was going to go. Obviously, the Winnipeg Bluebombers, I believe, took their first lead there early in the fourth quarter. It looked like they kind of had momentum on their side. The crowd was starting to get into it. Obviously, BC is able to hold on, but I thought, for a minute, maybe they were going to let this one slip away, excuse me. And they ultimately hold on, though, for the narrow 2-point victory. And it was a exciting game, honestly, from start to finish. The Lions actually came out and started pretty hot. And I guess that's probably where we can get into it first. But for anybody that is tuning in on YouTube, on Twitter, please interact with me and Blake in the chat. We love to hear from you guys about your opinion for what we're talking about, whether it's during the game recap here in a moment, what you guys liked, what you guys disliked, and who you guys think deserves maybe some game balls on the team. So let's get into it without further ado, I guess. Actually, give me a moment here, folks. I tried to throw my headphones in very quickly. Make sure that you guys head on over to the YouTube, like I mentioned. Please, 18 people tuning in here tonight. If the numbers are correct, over 75% of the people that tune into our content on YouTube aren't subscribed. So please hit the subscribe button. When you guys do, hit the notification bell. You guys will get notified every time we go live or upload a video on the channel. So that would be greatly appreciated, and hopefully we can push over 200 subscribers here on the channel tonight. So let's get into it. We are connected. So the Lions 26-24, and the Lions got off to a very hot start, and they started with the ball offensively. Wasn't able to see whether or not Winnipeg deferred or BC won the toss and received. But when BC started with the football, and 5 plays into the game, Vernon Adams found Alex Hollins for his first touchdown of the night, a 71-yard bomb. And Alex Hollins had himself a night that was just the start of the party, if you will, for Alex Hollins, who had 7 receptions for 215 yards. Yes, that is correct, folks. 215 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns on the evening. And got off to a very hot start, and just whenever VA needed a big play, whenever the Lions needed a big play, that was where VA was going, and it was more often than not caught by Alex Hollins. So as you see from Epic Tree here commenting on the chat, please, if anybody else is tuning in on YouTube, folks, please let us know how you're feeling about the Lions 26-24 win over the Winnipeg Bluebombers in the chat here tonight. We'd love to hear from you guys. BA 400 yards. I believe he was actually just shy, if I'm not mistaken, but I get what you're saying, Epic Tree. Basically, I think he was only 2 yards short, so I'm calling it a 400-yard game as well. 215 from Holland's best QB receiver duo in the league. Yeah, you might have to say that right now. I think if you were to maybe look around the league, maybe Cody Fajardo and Tyson Philpott are rivaling that in the East. I would say for sure, as far as in the West, that they're probably up there right now. You look at a Trevor Harrison, Keon Schaefer-Baker in Saskatchewan. I don't know if maybe Reggie Begelton, Jake Mayer in that class quite yet. I've liked what I've seen from Jake Mayer early on, but time will still tell on Jake Mayer in that tandem. But as far as the West, I think Alex Hollins VA is the best duo right now. But what Tyson Philpott and Cody Fajardo are doing over there in the East cannot be underestimated. That's for sure. And Todd Silva chimes in and says, should have tried scoring instead of kneeling down to end the game. Could have factored in for tiebreakers in the standing. Yeah, I would have probably liked to see them score as well. I guess maybe it was foreshadowing when Alex Hollins kind of almost gave up on his big play there in the fourth quarter. And to be honest, right, it's in late in the fourth quarter there. He catches a big pass over the middle of the field. He's probably gassed, so who knows how many more yards he still has left in him to run. So maybe cut him a little bit of slack considering he went down there. But the Lions not punching in, definitely a little bit of a question mark. But maybe we'll get into it a little bit later, Todd. Good question, though. I'll bring it back up when we get there in the fourth quarter. Maybe Blake will be here by then. So like I mentioned, Alex Hollins starts it off hot with a 71-yard touchdown from Vernon Adams, and the Lions go up 7-0. And the good thing here early on tonight and for the rest of the game, we didn't see any troubles from the extra point unit here tonight. No extra points being blocked from the Lions side of things tonight, which was good after having 2 of them blocked last week in Calgary. So shored that up, which is always promising, considering if you're going to score, you need to cap off with a extra point as well to make sure you're maintaining that 7-point lead, or just making sure you're not leaving any points on the board. So the next drive, I believe, was the 2-and-out from Winnipeg. We had a tackle for loss on first down, if I'm not mistaken, and then Pete Robertson had his second or third sack of the season for BC here early on through 3 games. And then from that point on, folks, we'll get into it here in a little bit. If anyone's tuning in, let me know how you guys felt about it. But from that point on, I kind of felt pretty underwhelmed from a pass rush side of things. Felt like Zach Collaros was able to hang back there a decent amount. There was a little bit of pressure on him. I think of specifically the one throw there late in the fourth quarter to Dempsey that just missed over Dempsey's hands, but there was a little bit of pressure on that throw. So a little bit of pressure throughout the game, but still would have liked to see them be able to be a little bit more a factor in the game here. But let me know how you guys are feeling about that in the chat if you guys are tuning in on YouTube, or get at me on Twitter as well. So um, after that, early on I was really enjoying the play calling from Jordan Maximic in the offense. I thought he was trying to get William Stanback kind of established there early, help out his offensive line. But then I liked a few other things of kind of getting the ball in Stanley Berryhill's hands early there with the tunnel screen. Um, there was a few other catches, I believe. The maybe the one of two, or one of maybe two or three. I can't remember how many he for sure held in, but it was another tough night for Travis Fulgham. I believe he had another catch there early on. So, trying to establish his other targets early on. Obviously, the big play from Hollins in the previous possession. So, I was enjoying the play calling there early on to try to eliminate Willie Jefferson, the pass rush, and everything like that. So, um, Lions were able to, I believe, kick a field goal on the next, or on that, sorry, on that very next, on that same possession, to go up 10-0 there in the first quarter. Um, and then I believe Winnipeg took over and was all over. That was um, the I believe the drive that kind of was capped off by the Zach Claros to Dalton Schoen play, where Josh Archibald was actually all over Zach Claros. He lets it go late, finds Dalton Schoen on the sideline with I believe it was Manny Rugamba in on coverage, which just a step behind, which I kind of it's been a theme for the defensive backs in the secondary all season. I feel like they've been just a step behind the ball arriving all season, which has been unfortunate, but. Um, Dalton Schoen makes the toe tap and grab, continues the drive for Winnipeg. They end up scoring, which was Strubler's first rushing touchdown on the evening, I believe, was capped off by another rushing touchdown. From I guess from a non-bomber side of things, I kind of enjoyed how they used Strebler. I know my man over at Bonfire Sports, Schnitzy, has kind of been super vocal on featuring Strebler and kind of that read option with Brady Oliveira and what they can bring there. So, from a Lions perspective, they definitely gave us a kind of I wouldn't say kind of throwing something different at us, but considering that everybody knows how much they want to use Strebler, but still something that I like that they featured Strebler that much, and I think it was effective. So before we get it going, it was 10-7 to end the first quarter, and this is a perfect time to bring in my co-host, who I believe will be on the road. But bringing in Blake right now to talk a little bit of BC Lions postgame once again. Blake, thanks for joining me, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, Cole. Yeah, a lot more stressful than I thought it was going to be. I was looked at one point and it was 20-7. I was like, all right, Winnipeg's a good team, but I think the Lions probably are going to pick up the win today. And then I came back about 20 minutes later, and all of a sudden it was 21-20 for the Bombers, and I was like, uh-oh, we're in for a finish here. But Mr. Automatic, as he quite usually does, came through for the Lions, and the defense did just enough to get that big victory.
So, Blake, I believe you're refing for, I believe maybe a majority of the second half. I think you maybe caught some of the first half. So maybe this recap will kind of be a little bit of filling you in as well. But the Lions ended the first quarter up 10-7, and then getting into the first possession there of the second quarter, the Lions were able to score another touchdown once again. But that was the drive that BA came up limping. I don't know if you actually were still paying attention to that point, Blake, but how much, I guess maybe that's a perfect kind of segue, was how much of the game were you able to catch there before you had to go to roughing?
Yeah, I was able to see the entirety of the first quarter and into Julio and Moj there in the second quarter. I pretty much was able to know what was happening up until halftime there. So I had heard, I believe it was on the drive where the Lions took a 13-7 lead, that VA scrambled, kind of went to the 5-yard line, and he was tackled by, I believe it was Evan Holm. And then Moj was saying right after the play that he kind of got up limping and was hobbling around the sidelines there just a little bit.
Yes, correct. So, and I believe it came from if I'm not mistaken, another miscommunication with Fulgham on 2nd and 5, if I'm not mistaken, that resulted in the Lions end up settling for a field goal. Um, But like you mentioned, the line's going up 13-7 there in the second quarter. And I don't know if you saw it. I believe it was actually on that possession, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was the drive falling. But shout out to Andrew Pearson, offensive lineman, Canadian offensive lineman, for actually getting his first reception of his career. Obviously, you don't see too many offensive linemen catching too many passes in pro football, but for whatever reason, he's brought into the game as kind of like an extra, tight end because he's eligible. He has to obviously report as eligible, but he's an offensive lineman at heart. But usually you see them stay in the block. He's obviously given the freedom to go out into the flats there and be like a check down option. Blake, were you able to see that? And how kind of maybe cool was that? And were you able to have a little bit of a laugh?
No, I wasn't able to see that. I was in the car for that. But even hearing Julio and Moj's reaction was pretty cool. And I don't know if I've even told you this. I think I might have. But Andrew and I actually have a personal connection. As my first season with the New Westminster High Andrew was our offensive line coach. So him and I did a bit of, I shouldn't call myself a coach. That's not what I am. But the first season that I was the stats guy for the New Westminster High Andrew and I were on the staff together, and so we shared some stuff. So him and I have always had a little bit of a personal connection. He comes out and watches every once in a while. I try and go see him at every Lions game. I saw him after the last home game. We saw him up at FanFest. We kind of give each other the bro hug, that kind of thing. So hearing that he was able to make a reception was pretty cool for myself personally.
Yes. So for the rest of the first half, I believe it was pretty slow from that point on. But then I don't know if you actually caught this, Blake, was a crucial mistake there to end the second half. It was 13-7, like we were saying there. And Zach Collaros, with I believe it was 5 seconds left to go in the first half, gets the ball in the shotgun there. Is kind of going through his reads. And I feel like a veteran like Zach Collaros definitely knows that with 5 seconds left, it's either kind of maybe a one or two read thing, and then kind of throw the ball either out of the back of the end zone or make sure he's just it's dirted or you're getting the ball out of your hands so that you can kick a field goal in that situation. And unfortunately for Winnipeg, fortunately for BC, he takes a little bit too much time. And not right away, actually, Blake. I don't know if you actually were able to catch this. At first, they were given still, I believe, 2 seconds left to go
1 second.
to kick the field goal. And then, Ryan Phillips and Coach Campbell were pretty vocal on the sidelines there to, can we review this? Is this a reviewable thing? The command center comes in, which was pretty cool. I thought makes the right call, and they were able to say that, the clock didn't start on time. There should have been one more second off the clock, I believe, and the half was over. So the Lions avoid another 3 points that would have been on the board, which would have been a 1 point victory for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers looking back at it. So a huge turning point in the game there to end the first half, which, a veteran like Zach Claros is definitely going to look back and say, damn, we sure missed one there because, that's a critical point in the game there to end the half. I believe they say like the first 4 minutes or the maybe it's like the last 2 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half are kind of some big crucial minutes there of kind of like setting the tone and kind of going into the locker room confidence. So Winnipeg stays off the board, but Blake, were you able to catch that and able to hear that on the broadcast? Kind of them going through at first they give them a little bit of time, but then they go to review and were able to make the right call.
Yeah, that was pretty much the last thing. I was able to catch bits and pieces during intermissions and end of games and stuff like that of the second half. But that was the final thing that I kind of full on saw. And Cole, I'll take you back just a minute as well, as that second that ended up being taken off the clock was actually a second that had given back to the Bombers in the first place, as the Lions they, with 10 seconds left, I believe it was, they gave the ball to Brady Oliveira. He got about 5 or 6 yards and a first down, but he didn't get out of bounds. And the clock had read 4 seconds. The command center came in, kind of said, no, it's only 3 seconds or 5 seconds on the clock, add a second back. And then I was able to see the replay. And as you mentioned, Coach RP and Coach Campbell were furious that the clock didn't start on time. They were pretty adamant that it hadn't. And as it turns out, they were right. As looking at the replay, it almost looked to me like two or three separate times where that clock was maybe like a half of a millisecond or a full a second, where it just kind of stopped during the play, including at the beginning of the play. So I didn't know what had happened at first. I had to check back later. But when I saw that it was 13-7 at halftime, I kind of knew what had happened. And as you mentioned, that's a huge turning point in a game that ends up being a Lions 2-point win.
Blake, before we get going here, buddy, 41 people here tuning in tonight. Blake, I'm no mathematician, but I want to say if 75% of the people aren't subscribed, that's probably about what, 27, 28 people? Correct me, or maybe doing the math for me, Blake, if you can there, that aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel. So please, folks,
yeah, that's about
head on over.
I think it's about 35 people that aren't subscribed.
Okay, yeah, there you go, buddy. Thanks for doing the mental math for me. But nonetheless, 75% of the people aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel here tonight that are tuning in. So please head on over, folks. Subscribe. We're 9 followers, 9 subscribers short of our goal here before we went live. Let's get over our goal of 200 here on the show tonight. That would be fabulous. So, Blake, let's get into it. And my mistake, we did miss one kind of main factor that was a huge talking point all night. I'm sure you'll see it on your timeline later tonight when you're scrolling on Twitter, Blake, and stuff like that. But Travis Fulgham actually had a fumble there late in the second quarter that kept points off the board for BC. I believe they were driving inside Winnipeg territory. I believe Winnipeg ended up recovering the ball on their own 32-yard line, but play where VA finds them over the middle. He makes the first defender miss. Is kind of fighting for extra yards. And on kind of on first look, it kind of chalked up to what he's fighting for extra yards. I don't hate it, but when they showed the replay on the other angle, he was kind of super loose with the ball, and you don't love to see that, and kind of super careless in a high traffic area over the middle. So not good, and kind of that was probably the spiraling point from there, Blake. I'm not too sure how much you heard about his struggles in the second half, but from that point on,
sorry, Cole,
from that,
I don't mean to cut you off, but I was able to see a couple of plays there in the second half. Both of them on that drive where Sean White kicked his third field goal of the game to make it 23-21 at the time, and Fulgham and VA on the first down play, they're not on the same page. VA expected Fulgham to stay. Fulgham cuts to the outside instead, and then on the second down play, VA just has to get rid of it, and Fulgham plain and simply can't catch the ball, or can't track the ball, I should say. He doesn't catch it as well, and it's really unfortunate because for anyone that's been following along on our videos since training camp, especially our guy Jay, someone like Darsh, people like that are diehard Lions fans like yourself and myself. Me especially, I was really high on Travis Fulgham in training camp. I thought he was guaranteed a spot pretty much. He makes the team, but then in week 1, he's 1 for 6 on catches, I believe. Week 2, he's 1 for 7, I think, or 1 for 5, something like that. And then week 3, he has more troubles and fumbles the ball again. If I'm Coach Campbell and Neil McAvoy and some of the GMs, I would kind of be saying to Travis, man, you have one more game like this, you might find yourself on the practice roster or looking for a new job.
yeah, absolutely, and I think he's going to start to feel the heat, and I really hope questions start to get asked there when kind of the media gets access to Coach Campbell and whoever's made available throughout the week, because I think it's time for questions to start being asked of is there kind of confidence being lost in Fulgham, excuse me, and why is there still a lack of chemistry between the two? Because through 3 weeks, I feel like yes, they are like a new connection. Obviously, Travis Fulgham's first year with the team, but that being said, Bernard Adams obviously gets everybody together there in his home state there of Washington for kind of their off-season training there for I believe like kind of like a weekend worth of work where they're able to get together, have some field work, get in the film room. Obviously, you get access to that with things like Arrow Up, so you're able to check what they're able to actually do. But although it's a weekend, folks, it might not seem like a lot of time. That's super valuable time to kind of get off the field as well, break bread, kind of learn your teammates and stuff like that. So they've also had the 2 weeks up, 2 or 3 weeks that they were up in Kamloops. So yes, the CFL has a fraction of the amount of time that the NFL has in comparison when it comes to off season, in building time, if that's what you want to call it, or practice time. When it comes to the NFL has off organized team activities, and then mini camp, mandatory mini camp, and then it gets into training camp and stuff like that. There's none of that stuff in the CFL. But that being said, 3 weeks into the season, you'd like to see them have a lot more chemistry than that, because he was definitely made up to be like this big, NFL kind of fallout, if you want to call him that. That's coming to the CFL to be, kind of taking over a prominent role in the offense, and he really hasn't delivered here through 3 weeks outside of a wide open touchdown that arguably could have been thrown to Aiden Eberhard as well, who was also running down the sideline, who was wide open. Tough 3 weeks, but hopefully it's just early in the season here, and they're hopefully able to get on the same page, because we're going to need them, and maybe we'll get into it in likes and dislikes down the road here, Blake. So let's get into the game recap of the second half there, Blake. So the Lions go into the locker room with the 6 point lead, 13-7, staying on top by six, and feeling good. Obviously, able to you know, keep the lead there. Was a little bit, worrisome there when Fulgham fumbles. It feels like, we outplayed them for the first half, but we're going to go down. We're going to go into the locker room losing for some reason by 1 point. And ultimately we end up, escaping that and end up keeping the lead. But to start this second half, I believe the Lions got a early stop there, early on to start the third quarter. And then the Lions from there on marched the football down the field, and Vernon Adams dropped it in the bucket to Alex Hollins for his second touchdown of the game. Blake, what were your thoughts of the game and performance from Alex Hollins? I obviously touched on it earlier. 7 receptions, 215 yards, Blake, and 2 touchdowns. My goodness, the bat signal was out in Winnipeg. What were your thoughts, buddy?
Yeah, it was an absolutely amazing performance. To take things to a bit of a lighter side here, if you're a BC Lions receiver, you should definitely hit me up and tell me to pick you in your in my fantasy team, I should say, as I've taken 3 Lions receivers here in the first 3 weeks of the season, and every week that I've taken a Lions receiver, they've scored at least one touchdown. Travis Fulgham in week 1, Justin McInnes last week, and then, of course, Alexander Hollins here this week, but with 2 touchdowns. But no, in all seriousness, that's an absolutely amazing performance. It's kind of like Hollins saw what Tyson Philpott did yesterday, and he's like, all right, TP6, I see you, but I can one-up you. I can go over 200 yards and double your touchdown production with 2 of them. Absolutely amazing performance. He had a reception of, I believe it was 71 yards, his first touchdown reception, 29 his second. I believe he might have had another long catch there at the end. So just an absolutely amazing performance by the man that wears number 13.
Yes, absolutely. So, like 192 subscribers now on the channel, folks. For everybody that's tuning in, 42 listeners, viewers, tuning in here tonight. Please head on over to the YouTube, subscribe. We got till Canada Day. It was the goal. That would be, I guess, probably another 2 Canadian Football Fanatic weekly show episodes and another post-game show till our time is up. But please head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe right now for a ton more good stuff. When you guys subscribe, please hit the notification bell. You guys will get notified every time we go live or post a video on the YouTube channel. So, Blake, let's get into it. The bat signal was out for the second time of the night. VA dropping it in the bucket. A beautiful throw for these. Second time, 20-7, the BC Lions went up. And that was probably when you're feeling good, Blake. You're like, okay, maybe step away for a second or two. And then from there on, the Bombers started to try to inch their way back, and did from that point on. And I believe it was the following possession there, was capped off by Chris Streveler's second touchdown, who was kind of competing with Alex Hollins, if you will, for who can have the most touchdowns in the game. Chris Streveler punches in for his second touchdown, and the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are within 6 points there in the third quarter. And then the Lions took over and were marching, but drive stalls and the Lions punt. And then I believe the Lions went into the fourth quarter with the lead still up 20-14. But to start or to end the third quarter, Blake, and to start the fourth quarter, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were on quite the drive. I believe it was a 9-play, 91-yard drive, if I heard correctly there on the broadcast. That was capped off by obviously Chris Streveler's third touchdown of the night. And Blake, I don't know if we've ever, we kind of talked too much on Chris Streveler here on the channel. Obviously trying to, shed quite a bit of light on Canadian talent throughout the league. But what are your thoughts on Chris Streveler? Obviously had himself a pretty good game, and I think he's a talented player, and I think in the right, if he can be used in the right way, he can be a pretty good weapon. So, what are your thoughts, Blake, and kind of how exciting of a player is he to you, or maybe how not exciting of a player is he to you?
Yeah, I don't think he's much of anything, to be completely honest. I mean, he's not a quarterback. If anything, he's a running back. As we saw in the first half, he's not a receiver. Him and Claros with the new rule that teams can have two receivers or two quarterbacks on the field at the same time, and the Claros stepped back, tried to thread a pass to Streveler, who had a ton of room in front of him, and then he simply dropped the pass. I think he's a really good short yardage guy. He's a better Jake Dolegala. Like, he can't throw as well as Dolegala, but he's definitely a better runner than Jake Dolegala is.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So let's get into it a little bit more here, and um, into the fourth quarter, the Lions obviously surrender the lead there and go down by 21-20. The Lions' following possession was the not too sure how much you were able to hear then, Blake, but McInnes had three back-to-back first down conversions, one on a second and shorter conversion, was able to run an out route, I believe. And then the third one was the longer one that was the kind of, I don't know if it was maybe a busted coverage there by Winnipeg, but they were kind of jumped on the on the underneath route and then try to go with the deeper route. And McInnes was open up the sideline, was kind of running an out and up of some sort and was wide open. BA was able to find him for a bigger play on the night. I believe Justin McInnes for a third straight time was over 90 yards. I don't know if he cracked 100 yards, but I saw there late in the fourth quarter he was at 95 yards. Obviously, I believe he started the season with 91. Last week, I forget exactly how many he finished with, and then 95 was what I seen the last time. So Justin McInnes continues to have a big time factor contributing to this offense, and especially in the fourth quarter, there are big time clutch moments there to move the chains, give the Lions offense a chance to kind of give points there in the fourth quarter, as well as give his defense a break that was somewhat struggling there. And we'll talk about it there in a little bit here, Blake. But getting into that finishing off that drive was I believe it was back-to-back misses that back-to-back targets missed to Fulgham that were the ones that I think that you're talking about earlier there that stalled the drive. The Lions weren't able to get any points and were kept off the scoreboard. So from there, I believe the Bombers and BC traded possessions, and then the Lions getting the ball back. Sean White's drive was able to kick a field goal the following possession, or I guess that was the drive that you were talking
That
about.
was
Those
the
two
drive,
catches,
yeah.
And then the Lions going up 23-21. Winnipeg got the ball back the next possession and were able to kick a field goal themselves, and taking the 1 point lead 23-24. And then we were late in the fourth quarter there. We were able to see Barry Hill get a huge first down for the Lions there, kind of be trusted by VA late in the fourth quarter. It was kind of an impressive play because he was stopped short of the first down and was able to fight for extra yards, make sure he got the ball across the first down. For a guy starting in his first CFL game, his first professional game. Huge for him to kind of make two, big plays, two plays that went for first down, even though his first catch was there still early in the first quarter. But I think it kind of was one that built confidence for BA there early on. And then the Lions were able to, I believe, kick the fourth Sean White field goal from there to make it 26 to 24. And then Blake, the next possession, the Bombers are driving, gaining some confidence. It's not looking good. I'm definitely losing a little bit of confidence myself. And then second and I believe it was maybe second and six, second and medium. And Zach Claros gets a little bit of pressure from look like Sione Tiama and a few other defenders, and overthrows Nick Dembski by a stride or two, and the Bombers are forced to punt, and the Lions take over from there and ice it. Blake, what do you think about the Bombers' struggles before we talk about the Lions' success here tonight?
Yeah, I think Bombers fans should really be worried right now. It's now been 3 games where Zach Claros has not thrown a touchdown pass yet. I don't know if Brady Oliveira got into the game at all today. I know he's healthy and he was listed as the backup, which I was seeing on a couple of Bombers fans' timeline. That's such a Mike O'Shea thing, You kind of maybe come into training camp a bit out of shape, and then maybe you already had a bit of an off-season injury. Maybe you pick one up in training camp. All of a sudden, you miss a game, and you have to earn your way back to being the starter. But yeah, like they're already out without Kenny the King Lawler. Dalton Schoen has not looked like himself, although I think he might have had a fairly decent game yet. I haven't had a chance to go over the Bombers' stats. And most importantly, their quarterback. If you don't have a good quarterback or at least good quarterback play, you're plain and simply not going to win in the CFL. So I think the Bombers, can they turn it around? Yeah, absolutely. Look at the 2011 BC Lions. They started 0-5 and then turn it around. I think they lost 2 games the rest of the year and go on to win the Grey Cup. But the Bombers are digging themselves a big, big hole. I mean, you and I talked about it on Wednesday on the way to, or on our weekly show, that the Lions really have a 2 game or a 3 game cushion, I should say, on the Bombers. And I know that it's only week 3, but if you think about it, they have a 3 game cushion. For the Bombers to even tie the Lions would be till week 6, and these two teams play each other again in week 7.
Yeah, I think there's a few more layers to peel back when it comes to the Bomber struggles as well. Personally, I feel a little bit slightly different as far as kind of Zach Colaros's struggles. Although not having a touchdown pass still is not the greatest. He did engineer all three of the scoring drives basically down to the 1 yard line himself. And on the night had himself a pretty good day, only having 7 incompletions on the night, going 23 of 30, 247 yards. Um, to me, I think peeling back those layers, Blake, you got to look at some of the injuries that they've had, which is nobody needs to feel sorry for them, but not having, like you mentioned, a Kenny Lawler, right, a number one, bona fide number one receiver. Dalton Schoen, I don't know if he's kind of battling through some injuries. Obviously, I think he was a little bit banged up there throughout training camp, but he doesn't maybe seem the same. But um, I think that they were kind of, to me, I think that'll be one of my struggles here in a bit that we'll talk about, was kind of like the lack of the lines not being able to stop the Bombers' offense passing wise for majority of the night. Obviously, it kind of turns out that on the scoreboard it looks like Strebler has 3 touchdowns, but Strebler goes what 10 carries, 24 yards, which is an average of 2.4 yards a carry, which is basically he had 10 goal line touches and or 10 basically 10 carries that went for 2.5 yards each time. So basically all short yardage situations and 3 quarterback sneaks. So outside of that, Zach Collaros was engineering a lot of those drives, booming the ball up and down the field. And I really think they're struggling to find that kind of third option outside of Wolodarski kind of performed here tonight. Nick Dempsey will be their number one receiver with 10 targets, but he had 8 receptions on 10 targets for 94 yards, no touchdowns, obviously. Drew Wolodarski had 7 targets, caught all 7 for 74 yards. And then Dalton Schoen had 7 targets for 5 receptions on 54 yards. And then after that, they don't really have too many guys contributing. You had Ontario Wilson, I believe is how you pronounce his
Yeah.
name. who I believe got actually hurt. Looked like he kind of grabbed his knee. I don't know if I remember seeing him come back into the game, but you know, I don't know if Bombers fans that are tuning in here tonight, they're probably tuning into the bonfire kind of after Winnipeg after dark, I believe it is. But if anybody is, kind of let us know how they feel about some of the options behind, Nick Dembski, Dalton Schoen. Obviously, Wolodarski performs here tonight, but I don't know if he's kind of sustainable as a third option to kind of keep contributing with, catching all 7 of his targets for 74 yards. Obviously, he seems like a pretty reliable guy in the past. Every time I watch Bombers games, he's seeming to come down with passes that are thrown to him. But can he do that? For the most of his time throughout the Bombers, he's been the fourth or fifth option, right? They've had look at the receivers they've had. Obviously, Kenny Lawler coming back and forth throughout Winnipeg. Dalton Schoen's kind of emergence. Nick Dembski being there, so he's always kind of Rasheed Bailey. He's always been the fourth or fifth option. Now he's kind of being asked to have a few more targets. Kenny can contribute at that level for the majority of the season. Obviously, Kenny Lawler, I believe, placed on the 6 game to start the year, so he's probably going to be out for another, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So the workload is going to be probably on Wolodarski to still keep up that workload for another month or so till Lawler can get back. Can he do it? I don't know. I think that's what limits them, right? Because obviously they like I mentioned, Zach Claus goes 23 of 30, 7 incompletions only, but he only has 247 yards, right? You probably like to see that maybe a little bit more up, to, closer to 300, where maybe those explosive plays in the past aren't there now. For me, Brady Oliveira, like you mentioned, you didn't know if he played. He had 9 carries for 64 yards, which is 7.1 yards in average. And last week, Blake, I believe Johnny Augustine, he only had 7 attempts last week rushing the ball. For whatever reason, Buck Pierce is kind of going away from running the ball, which is a little bit odd because I think the Bombers are struggling to maintain pass blocking for a full 60 minutes, or kind of leaning on them for more than even kind of looks like their sweet spot, if you will, for tonight is 30 attempts for Zach Collaros. Can they really hold up pass blocking for that long? It seems like they've kind of struggled there, taking a step back. Jamarcus Hardrick obviously goes over to Saskatchewan, has obviously had quite the impact over there, but they have bona fide Hall of Famer on the left side still. But outside of that, are they really kind of going to be able to hold up for an 18-game season and give Zach Collaros the time he needs? I think that's the big question mark as well. I think the biggest thing, if you're the Bombers fans, which is good for us, Blake, why not feed Brady Oliveira? I think, like people were saying, that's a little bit more or kind of what I think it's kind of a little bit of gamesmanship on O'Shea's part of kind of putting Brady Oliveira as a backup running back. I think he knew all along that he was going to. Darshawn kind of mentioned it, that he knew all along that he was going to see a ton of work, and kind of just playing coy, if you will, showing Johnny Augustine, the Lions, are preparing for that all day throughout their meetings before the game and stuff like that. And then Brady Oliveira is kind of like that card that's up their sleeve. I think the Lions hopefully knew the whole time that Brady Oliveira was going to have a meaningful impact in this game. Obviously, Johnny Augustine only has 4 carries for 15 yards. So that's a total of, I guess, what? And it's kind of tough, I guess, with Strevler. They end up having 24 carries on the night combined with Brady Oliveira, Strevler, Augustine, and Nick Dembski, which is probably their sweet spot. But 10 carries to Strevler is probably too much, in my opinion. I think you'd probably like to see the ball in the most outstanding Canadians' hands, arguably the most outstanding players' hands last year. Brady Oliveira, who had almost 2,000 yards. I think you'd like to see it in his hands at least. He didn't have any receptions catching the ball, so he had 9 total touches on the night. You'd probably like to see him get the ball 15 to 20 times a game at least. So if I'm a Bombers fan, I'd be pretty pissed off from that standpoint. But as far as the Bombers, we'll kind of leave it at that. And from here on out, Blake, let's celebrate a BC Lions 26-24 victory. And Blake, it was kind of nervous there in the fourth quarter there. Winnipeg's driving there. The Lions end up holding, able to squeak out the 26-24 narrow 2-point win. Exciting game. And just what were your thoughts that the Lions are able to move to 2-1 and keep the Bombers at 0-3?
Yeah, I was really happy with the result. I mean, like I said a bit earlier, I was frustrated. I'll say that the Lions had a lead, and for the second time in 3 weeks, they kind of gave it away. But unlike the Toronto game a couple weeks ago, they were able to regroup and do just enough to get the victory. We'll have to wait and see what happens in Saskatchewan's game later this week. Not that it matters too much at this point of the season, who's in first, who's in second, whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely good to be over 500 compared to under 500. And if we had lost this game, us and the Bombers are in the exact same boat. So it's definitely good to keep them down there in the basement, a place that, with all due respect to my Winnipeg friends, I hope they stay for the entirety of the season.
So, as mentioned, who would have had, I'm glad we're not talking about, as Lions fans, we can talk about the if, ands, or buts now because we came out on the better side. But, thinking they're late in the fourth quarter, oh my goodness, if we lose, both of us are going to be 1-2, but the Bombers are going to have the satisfaction of having the head-to-head, excuse me, the head-to-head victory over us. Um, you know, everyone in the media are going to be talking about, the Bombers going to be, basically, I would think probably Monday morning, right over the BC Lions in terms of power ranking, stuff like that. Everybody talking about, Winnipeg's back, BC's struggling, kind of skipping over Winnipeg struggles the previous 2 weeks. And because, recency bias, if you will, I'm glad that we don't have to talk about that. But I was thinking we're both going to be 1-2, but the satisfactory is going to be with Winnipeg because they beat us. Now we have the ultimate satisfaction because we're 2-1. They're 0-3, winless still. Like I mentioned, dare I say must win. The Lions cash in. I think the Bombers are entering that territory now. They must win because if you get to 0-4, I don't know if you're making the BC Lions 2011 comeback from there. Maybe you make it into the playoffs. Maybe you make it into a crossover situation. But I think ultimately you have probably too many cracks. You're trying to push. You're starting to play playoff games in July and August, and then you start to get burnt out by the time playoffs happen. I think they need to start to kind of get a few wins here. If the Bombers are able to keep 500, if they get a win 1-2, 2-2, I think that's the recipe for the Bombers to be dangerous. But if they keep losing here, they can dig themselves a hole too deep to get out of. So love to see it from a BC Lions perspective because the West is already tough as it is. It seems with Saskatchewan and Calgary emerging as two teams that seem to be pretty tough contenders there in the West here early on. So Blake, let's get into I guess our second of three segments here on the night. So first we have the game recap, obviously, which we'll have after every post-game show, and then we'll get into our likes and dislikes, which we're going to get into here in a moment, folks. But if anybody's here tuning in on YouTube, please let us know in the chat. Jay, Jordan, anybody else, any other Lions fans we had in here earlier, let us know how you guys are feeling about 26-24 victory for the BC Lions over Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel. If anybody's tuning in here tonight for the first time, you can catch Blake and I every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, right here on the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel, where we talk about all things Canadian football and especially our BC Lions. So, Blake, let's get into our likes and dislikes. And what should we start with? Should we start with the thumbs down, Blake, or should we start with the thumbs up here tonight?
Oh, let's start with the thumbs down so that we can finish on a high note.
That's what I thought as well. So Blake, I will go here first here tonight, and then I will let you go second. So I'm going to start with something that I think maybe I'll give you kind of the lane that I think you'll maybe talk about something next. I'm going to start with first and foremost the secondary combined with I think a unit that doesn't get any slack here tonight, the defensive line that I didn't really like. After the Pete Robertson sack, I don't think they had much in terms of I think sacks or pressures that come to mind. Obviously, like I mentioned, they had the pressure on uh, the overthrow to Nick Dempsey there late in the fourth quarter, which comes in huge. Which you don't always need to get sacks, right? Sacks are kind of not an end all be all. If you can get pressure on a quarterback, stress him out, make him off his platforms, all that sort of stuff. That's huge. But looking at the stats here, that's confirming only one sack here on the night. Not much pressure as well, which I think I was more disappointed with the secondary, but I think in tandem, if the defensive line, Blake, the best thing about football is the team, how much of a team sport it is, right? And like all team sports, right? But if the defensive line is able to get pressure on Zach Collaros and kind of make him, throw the ball that much quicker, or maybe not get to a second read, the secondary doesn't have to cover for so long. And I think it was talked about on the broadcast. I'm not too sure how much Julio and Moj touched on it, but VA was sitting back there for quite a bit of time. But I think just as maybe almost just as long, Zach Alaros was having quite a bit of time back there to kind of go through his reads and find the open receiver. As you can see, obviously with the only 7 incompletions, and kind of being able to pick and find receivers at will. Um, I want to see more from the secondary, but at the same time, we see a guy like Christian Covington come in, right? Pete Robertson obviously he's delivered here early on. I can't really say too much from him. Sione Tama's had himself 2 out of 3 good games. Didn't really see too much from him tonight, and I believe he had a personal foul there that cost the Lions 15 yards, I think, in the first half. So that's never good. But I'd like to see a little bit more, especially from maybe Sione as far as finishing in terms of getting to the quarterback. He's been good pressuring, but maybe seeing him finish a little bit more, and then we got to get Christian Covington going a little bit more because as obviously we mentioned, I don't remember how many sacks David Menard had off by hand. I want to say double digits at
I think it
10,
was. I
but
think you're right. I think it was 10.
if it's combined, or if I'm right, combined with Matthew Betts, that's 28 sacks that we're missing, with 18 from Matthew Betts, 10 from David Menard. So early on it's been a slow start, but I'd really like to see Christian Covington get going because I think it can help out that young secondary that's behind them, and that can kind of, I guess, kind of leapfrog me here into my next kind of. I think the most concerned I'm with is that secondary, and I was talking a little bit about it on Twitter here with a guy I like to banter back and forth with on Twitter, named James, who is a fellow kind of football enthusiast on Twitter, and kind of sharing our level of concern. The one thing I will kind of say first, to defend them, give them a little bit of slack is, if you really think about it, Blake, outside of Gary Peters, all 4 of them are pretty much new
Hmm.
full-time starters, right? Adrian Green starting for the first time, shared a lot of time last year starting. I think only 8 of the 18 games last year. So for 10 games, he wasn't a starter. Manny Urgumba starting for the first time at halfback. Patrice Rene starting for the first time at will. Ciante Evans obviously is a veteran that came over starting 2 of 3 games, but he struggled tonight. He was quite often behind Nick Dembski in coverage, and quite often far behind. He was pretty far behind in the overthrow by Zach Laos. Thankfully overthrown by Zach Laos because Ciante Evans was quite far behind. Obviously, as a veteran, Evans and has a Grey Cup ring after last year in Montreal, but maybe he's a little bit older. And then on the other side, Jordan Perryman, who um, you know kind of I like what I've seen, but he shows it's almost like taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. Like he has 10 good plays, and then you see like one bad play, and you're like, oh, maybe he's not as good as I thought. So Perryman, I think there's been a little bit more to be desired from him as well. So those 4 guys have kind of been you know good, but or I would say, I guess, meh, but not bad, right? They haven't been terrible by any means, but they haven't been great, right? Which is what you'd like to see and what we've been accustomed to the last few years, right? I think we saw for the first time Adrian Green actually make a pass breakup. I kind of was going to joke about it on Twitter that I don't remember any pass breakups throughout the first 2 games, but thinking about it a little bit more, I do remember like a Manny Gumba one in Toronto there week 1. I'm sure if I thought about it a little bit more, I could remember a few last week in week 2, but it feels like they're always like a step behind the ball arriving to the receiver's hands. And really, in previous years, we've seen guys like Marcus Sales, T.J. Lee, Gary Peters, Jalen Edwards Cooper last year, get to the ball, break up passes, and really, add up kind of those pass breakup stats, which is, almost just as good as an interception, Blake, right? If you're able to, make the ball incomplete, not get it to the receiver. Obviously, you like to get possession, give the ball back to your offense, but if you can break up the ball and knock the ball down, it's almost just as good. So I think the Lions need to do a better job in that department, and I think it starts with the pass rush as well, being able to get home a little bit faster, get the ball out of their hands, not make the secondary have to cover for so long, but at the same time, like I talked about on Wednesday, Blake, you know I don't know if help's coming, right? Like TJ Lee, obviously we're hoping he's going to come back, and he's going to come back. Look, that we're not hoping he's going to
Eventually,
come
yeah.
back. He's going to come back, right? But my concern is he going to come back at 100%, right? And he's going to come back for obviously probably whoever's going to start, whether it's Manny or Gumba. You shift Manny or Gumba back inside to Will. Patrice Rene is a guy that's kind of a bench player, a special teams guy, and TJ Lee and Ciante Evans are the halfbacks. I'm not too really sure what you do. Maybe Ciante Evans struggles so much that Manny Gumba and TJ Lee are halfbacks. But TJ Lee is by all means not going to lose his starting job. He's going to get dropped right back into that defense. My only concern is he going to be TJ Lee this season? I don't have confidence in that, to be honest, right away, Blake. And is help coming on the outside. Gary Peters has been, kind of doing his thing for the most part, right? Gary Peters has been quiet, which is what you want to see from a guy that's, your boundary corner, not getting targeted too often. But there has been a few times that he is in coverage and kind of getting picked on. And that's a few times, right? And I think Gary Peters has been Gary Peters, right? A guy that kind of, you know, can go line up on the right or left side of the field and kind of take away one of your receivers. And you kind of saw that tonight, whether when it came to limiting the Bombers receivers to getting into the end zone. So my dislike here tonight, Blake, will be the defensive line slash the secondary, and I will pass it over to you for what did you dislike here on the evening?
Yeah, I disliked Travis Fulgham for starters, but kind of that whole receiving core. We talked about it, and I'll preface that by saying no disrespect to them. But we talked about it on Wednesday night, kind of who would step up to be that third target. We didn't really know yet. We knew Alex Hollins, we knew Justin McInnes, who was going to step up after that. Fulgham had a really bad game again today. We mentioned the fumble. We mentioned the two miscommunications. Stanley Berryhill maybe solidified himself as that third target, but I don't really know about that. I mean, I know he had the two catches, but was he really targeted other than those two plays? Aiden Eberhardt, for the third straight game, finishes with less than two receptions. I don't know. Did he have any, Cole?
Aiden Eberhardt did have a few catches. He had um, I thought he had one. He might have I guess not had one now that I'm looking at the stats. Yeah, he doesn't have a reception here according to the CFL website. So
Yeah,
held
so
off the stat.
So exactly. So other than those top two guys that we already knew about, I mean, Hollins has 215 yards. McInnes has between another 90 and 100. So you add that all up, and it's about 300 of VA's 410 yards, which means the other 110 yards is split up between three receivers, which on average is about 40 yards per receiver. I don't think that's good enough from the BC Lions. VA having 400 and some odd yards passing is great. So is Hollins with 215. I'd like to mention, we'll get to that in our likes as well. Standback had another decent game. But other than that, someone really needs to step up and be that third target, as eventually, as the season wears on, teams are going to know, hey, look, they're looking Holland's ways. Hey, look, they're looking McInnes' way. They don't have that much trust in the other three guys. So, heck, let's double team one of them, maybe even go full out and double team them both, and we'll just make someone else beat us because we don't think that they can.
Yeah, I agree. With most of what you're saying, especially with Fulgham, which I was glad that you went there, Blake. That's why I was hoping that you would. I believe even outside of the two mixed communications, you might have had a few more, Blake, that maybe weren't picked up on radio or weren't mentioned by Julio and Moj, but he was targeted. Let me try to bring this up. Actually, we can actually see. I shouldn't have closed my phone here quickly. Um, Yeah, so once again, Blake, I don't remember what I said on Wednesday night, but he was targeted, I believe, last week. What was it? 7 times for one catch
One
only,
catch,
having
yeah.
six incompletions. This week, he was targeted 8 times, which was tied second on the team. He was targeted just as many times as Alex Hollins and had 3 receptions for 33 yards. So not good enough. 5 times out of the 8 times the ball went his way, it was incomplete. So I want to say it was either 3 or 4 times actually. There was miscommunications where there was one on the broadcast that VA was pretty vocal with him, very frustrated with him. He said, there was the out route that he told him to stay, right? Obviously, it's kind of like it's like a field route, if you will, or kind of like a very thing that you're able to do in the pros because you run so many times. You get so many repetitions with one another. You're able to kind of know what one another are going to do. You're on the same page usually most of the time, where it's kind of like these option routes, where you have the freedom to turn inside, turn outside, and sometimes you have the option to keep going if there's not a defender in the flats there, and VA can kind of throw you like an out route, or sometimes you can kind of hook up like a little button hook, right? And VA wanted him to stay, and Fulgham kept going. It was obviously I think the first of the miscommunications there
Yeah.
early on in the game, and just needs to be figured out. I think our friend Dave actually mentioned it there throughout the game on Twitter to say that once Javon Katoy comes back, should we look at the possibility of Barry Hill taking over for Fulgham? I don't think with kind of um the I don't know what the right word is, like the praise that came behind,
Pedigree.
well, the pedigree. Thank you, Blake. The pedigree that came behind Fulgham, I think that's going to kind of give him a little bit longer leash than us fans would like, which might be a little bit unfortunate. But inside that front office, the Lions are going to think, it's a long season. They're also going to think, we need Fulgham. If you pull him now, does he kind of check out? He thinks, what, I'm up here in Canada, I get benched. Does he completely check out and you don't really have him from there? You're probably going to need him being a long season, right? Maybe he makes a play that the Lions fans have been harping on him all season, but maybe he makes the West final game-winning touchdown, right? That kind of turns things around. So at some point, you're going to need him. You're going to need to build his confidence. So I don't know if he's going to get the hook right away. Although I really liked what I saw from Stanley Berryhill, I kind of would like to see him featured a little bit more. Maybe it's Aiden Eberhard that comes out of the lineup because I think he was the guy that's going to come out of the lineup regardless when Hatcher comes out. I think you just saw a little bit more explosiveness from Berryhill that I think the Lions lack right now outside of Hollins. On the other side, Eberhard I think is a good slot receiver that I think you need to have on the inside. Him being the field side receiver that's kind of that field stretcher. I think if you have Berryhill there using his speed, running those tunnel screens, I think that's a good area for him. Maybe you're trying to find like kind of that happy 50-50 or 60-40 between Fulgham and kind of Fulgham and Eberhard splitting time in the slot or something like that when Javon Katoy comes back. But not too sure what you do. I think you need to do shake a little bit of things up because I think although like you said, big day for VA, 398 on the day, 215 to Hollins, 95 to McInnes. 95 to McInnes, 310 yards of VA's 400 going to those two. The other three need to step up. But, Blake, maybe, Blake, we have a secret weapon in Andrew Pearson going 1 for 1 for 13 yards. But all jokes aside, Blake, is there any other likes that come to mind before we get to or dislikes, excuse me, before we get to our likes?
No, I think other than the ones that you already mentioned, the defensive line only recording one sack again, the secondary not recording a turnover. That was kind of unfortunate. And other than the three receivers, I guess technically four if we include Pearson, but three receivers that didn't really step up in this game, I think that the Lions, like I said earlier, did enough. So let's go to our likes.
All right, buddy, and I will let you start first. I guess I won't be a bad host, and I will allow the co-host to go second or first this time. So, Blake, give me something you liked from the BC Lions 26-24 victory.
I like that they won. No, I like that they finally gave the ball to William Stanback some more. That's what I heard a lot of when I was in the car driving to reffing. I believe I don't know exactly what he finished with, but I know on that drive alone, he had a good 20, 30 yards. So I like that they got him more involved. We said even last week, even though he had 60 yards or whatever, we wanted to get him more involved. And I think they did that enough this week. Of course, when you throw for 410 yards, You can't get the running back involved as much as maybe us fans would like. But it was even talked about by Moj and Julio on the broadcast there that Stanback is just a completely different runner than Taekwon Mizell was last week. It's so deflating to a defense when the defense knows you're going to run, everyone's in the box for the run and they still can't stop it. There was a play in that second quarter, I think it was like 2nd and 2 or whatever, that the Bombers knew the Lions were going to run, and Stanback just ran right up the middle for about 6 yards. So I really liked that from the Lions. Smash mouth football, if you will, and I hope that that continues further on into this season.
All right, Blake. So, I agree with most of what you said. I'm gonna go with my likes. I'm gonna go with a couple, here, Blake, and then I'll allow you to maybe go with a few, to close it out. So I'm gonna start with, Jordan Maximic, Blake. I liked his, play calling there earlier, kind of trying to establish, William Stanback early on, allowing the, BC Lions offensive line to, come forward a little bit, right? Kind of, for those, I feel like that they kind of, when you're pass blocking, right, a lot of the time for people that see those offensive linemen kick back, right, you're kind of letting the defensive lineman come to you so much, right? When you run block, you're kind of dictating, you're being that, you probably hear it a lot, Blake, right, a lot around football circles, but being the hammer and not the nail, right? A lot of times in pass block, you kind of have to try to try to take the brunt force of the blow from the defensive lineman and try to slow them down, right, and try to stop them from getting to the quarterback. But when you run block, you can really start to try to, impose your will and try to, move a grown man off his spot, which is kind of, super impressive to do when you think about it, right? From some of these big 300 and 250 pound guys. And I think, he was able to establish William Stanback, which gave his offensive line confidence there early on, allowed them to not, get beat on there early on, allowed them to kind of set the tone, and then allowed them to, take over the game passing there when they sprinkled it in, and allowed them to, set up the play action that, gave EA. Like I don't know if Moj and Julio were touching on it, but they had a couple good graphics there on TSN where I believe it was on the Alexander Hollins one. He had more than 4.5 seconds, I think it was, to throw the ball, which is plenty of time, way more than you need. If you can get 2.5, 3 seconds, that's plenty. 4.5 seconds, I believe it was. It was over. I want to say it was 4.1 or 4.5 or something like that. I can't remember correctly. And there was another one that was over 4 seconds. So I think sprinkling in that run game allows the offensive line to hold up in pass protection a little bit more, because obviously throughout the first 2 weeks they've been talked about quite a bit. But I think Max Emmett's game plan early to kind of try to help them out. We saw it last week at home, Blake, too, with some of those quick passes to Hollins and stuff like that. The Lions just weren't able to execute the way they were able to early on today, with kind of the offensive line, leaning on the offensive line a little bit more, and trying to get them a little bit more momentum. But loved what I saw from Jordan Maximic in terms of game planning once again. I thought he had, him and VA are starting to kind of vibe off one another, and you can see that they, Maximic likes, he knows and kind of likes what VA knows as well. So leaning off that, I will also kind of touch on the offensive line and Stanback. Blake, obviously, William Stanback finished with 16 carries on 83 yards, which is 5.2, excuse me, on average. So I feel like I mentioned with Darshawn there on Twitter. I feel like everybody in the fan base has been mentioning to give Stanback the ball, give Stanback the ball. And I think that's honestly probably his sweet spot right there, Blake, is like 16 carries. 15 to 20 is probably, no more than 20, no less than 15. Anywhere in between that area is probably perfect, because you don't want to take the ball out of VA's hands, right? VA had 33 pass attempts, going 21 to 33. So not bad for VA, right? Having, what is that, 9, 3, 12 incompletion. So not too bad. I wonder what his average would have been there, 21 to 33. Blake, quick mental math, what that would be completion percentage wise?
About 70%, I think.
So still pretty good
21.
on the night. 398 yards,
I
which
was
is,
I was a bit off. It's 63, almost 64%.
but 64% is very respectable. That's pretty, if you can be a 64% passer, that's I would say it's slightly above average kind of area. I think it's like Trevor Harris has like around like maybe 71%. That's pretty good throughout the league. Cody Fajardo, I think, was pretty close to the all-time Montreal Alouettes record, which is held by Anthony Calvillo at 72, I believe, and Cody Fajardo I think at 71.6 last year or something like that. So if you can be like close to 70s, that's pretty good. If you can be like 60 mid 60s, that's above average, kind of pretty good. And then you start to get anywhere close to 60s. That's kind of you don't want to drop below 60s. That's not the best production completion percentage wise, anyways. So VA pretty good out of 33 attempts, and you probably don't want Sandback having any more than that, right? If you maybe give Sandback 3 more attempts, say VA only has 30 pass attempts, it goes 21 to 30. You give Sandback 3 more carries, having 19. He probably goes over 100 yards and is probably perfect, but not going to complain that the Lions, had 3 more pass attempts because when VA is so good, right, having 398 yards, right, why take the ball out of his hands, right? You're probably going to maybe lean towards throwing the ball 3 more times. So, nitpicking probably a little bit more on our part, but love what I saw from Stanback. I think that's a perfect number for him. And then the offensive line I mentioned on Twitter, I got to give a hat tip and a salute to them. They've been getting big time criticism from the in the CFL that's paying attention of are they going to get BA killed? Are they going to be the reason why the Lions can't win it all? I think give them the credit when they deserve it because they've been hearing it. I'm sure because they're human beings. They open up Twitter just like us. They open up Instagram and listen to podcasts, and I'm sure they listen to Three Down Nation and Justin Hodge or John Hodge and the boys critiquing them, the Waggle, all that good stuff, all the good media across the CFL. And they deserve to be applauded when they deliver. And I think tonight they delivered. I will check here quickly on the fly. If I'm not mistaken, CFL.com does not have Winnipeg with a sack, at least none of the, no sacks. So only one
2
sack
straight
on the
weeks.
evening. So yeah, one sack on the evening for BC, and then no sacks for the Bombers. So back-to-back weeks of the Lions' offensive line did not surrender a sack. Big kudos to them. They were also able to allow William Stanback to rush for 5.2 yards a carry, 83 yards. So combining Vernon Adams 5 carries for 24 yards, over 100 yards rushing with 21 carries. So a good day for the offensive line. I think they're going to be enjoying this one. Hopefully not too much, and are motivated to beat the wheels off Edmonton, I believe, on a short week here coming up. So Blake, I will pass it over to you for any final likes on the evening.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, while you were talking there, I thought of one more like, and it's it's his nickname around the Lions. Us fans know it as well, but Mr. Automatic, Sean White, he was 2 for 2 on his PATs and 4 for 4 on his field goals. That's a combined 6 points, and when you win the game by 2 points, those are 6 huge points. So for Sean White to kind of park those extra points that he had blocked last week, come back, work, I'm sure, knowing Sean a little bit, at least around the team, he probably worked twice as hard this week. If you think about it, if those roles are reversed, if he goes perfect last week, has 2 extra points blocked this week, this is a tie football game, and the Lions would have to take their chances in overtime. So just absolutely huge from the Lions kicker. We've come to expect that over the years. We hope that it continues for maybe another year or two, but definitely Mr. Automatic gets a huge kudos from me tonight.
Mr. Automatic is right, Blake. I'm glad you brought him up because, forgive me, I definitely forgot. Going 4 for 4. I want to say, I don't want to mention. I feel like the broadcast man, Dustin Nielsen and Glenn Suderman. If Sean White is on a not miss streak, that is like a shutout in hockey. You do not utter
20,
the S.
24 or something, isn't it?
Yes, you do not utter the S word. If you don't utter the S word in hockey, you don't utter the same. It's the same thing in football. I feel like they are jinxing this man. He is on a heater right now. You said 25 straight kicks, Blake.
I think it's 24, 25, yeah. I think it was
Yeah,
might even be 26 because I think it was 24 going into the kick that made it 23-21. So he might be at 26 now.
yeah, I believe it's 25 or 26 now straight from Mr. Automatic. Obviously, last year having I want to say above 90%
Yeah.
kick percentage last year, kicking field goals. So has been aging with beauty. Guess I should give his organization, his junior organization, a little bit of credit. But shout out to the Langley slash Surrey slash Big Kahuna Rams for developing him. I believe he went through a little bit of a JUCO circuit in the states, and then kind of landed back with the Lions practice roster and kind of studied under Paul McCallum, and then eventually got his breakthrough in the CFL and was BC, Montreal, Edmonton, I believe,
Yeah.
and then back to BC. So shout out to Sean White, good BC boy. I believe is he White Rock or maybe Langley?
White Rock. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's from
White
White
Rock.
Rock.
White Rock boy. I know he helps out with the community football out there as well. Shout out to the White Rock Titans, but not too much because if my buddy Jeremy's listening, I know he's big rivals with the White Rock Titans there in the I believe Community Football League here in BC. With the Nanaimo Seahawks over here taking on the Nanaimo or the White Rock Titans there, and he says that's their stiff competition. So shout out to both those two for contributing in the community football here in British Columbia. But Blake, let's get into our game balls and then a few other things before we get out of here. Blake, I'm gonna go first. Actually, no, I'm gonna allow you to go first because I don't know where you're gonna go. Who do you want to give your? Is this our second or third game ball of the year? To?
I think this is our third game ball. The softy in me wants to give the game ball to Andrew Pearson. 1 for 1 in receptions, 13 yards. Turned out to be a pretty big reception as well. I believe it led to that 13-7 field goal. But how can you not go Alex Hollins? 7 receptions, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns on the night, and 7 for 8. He had 8 targets, so he was only incomplete when VA threw to him once. What a job by Mr. Number 13. The bat signal was out in full force tonight for the BC Lions.
It was indeed. I figured you go there or VA. I think VA gets enough credit that we don't need to give him any more game balls. Although I did see, I just kind of scrolling on Twitter there trying to see who's tuning out and stuff. I did see a quick clip. I'm curious if VA did get the game ball in the locker room there from the team because he was on a heater there himself. Had excuse me, anytime you're near 400 yards, that's a hell of a day. And you can't take nothing away from that. But I'm going to go with the guys that, make it all happen, the big fellas that don't get enough credit to piggyback after what we just talked about. And I'm going to give my game ball to let's go with all six, including Andrew Pearson, offensive lineman, the game ball here today because I think without them, right, like I mentioned here earlier, I love football so much because it is the best team sport, in my opinion. Kind of didn't really realize that early on in my high school career when I played with three other, I would say maybe even four or five other pretty skilled players, but we lacked any sort of size and any sort of offensive lineman. Had a few guys that had a lot of heart, but undersized kind of guys. And if you don't have an offensive lineman, you can't really do much offensively, right? If you don't have a defense, you don't have a defensive line that can pass rush. Your secondary is covering for 4 or 5 seconds. They're getting torch rate. If you don't have linebackers, depending if if your defensive line is kind of getting pressure, if your linebackers can't tackle, maybe sometimes they can't reap the rewards of the destruction that the defensive line is creating. So football is the ultimate sport, and I think without the offensive line today, the Lions wouldn't have as much success. So I got to give the big boys some credit, like I mentioned. They do not get enough credit, and when it's all their fault, I shouldn't say all their fault. When it's their fault, they get crapped on the most. It's kind of like the quarterback position. You don't have the ball as much, but you can be in the headlines just as much because people are quick to say, the offensive line played like BS. That's the reason why they lost. And yes, a lot of the times that can be true, but playing offensive line is very hard, folks, considering You're trying to block guys like Willie Jefferson, who's like 6'7", 200 and what 35, 40 pounds of straight muscle.
Yeah.
A guy that's super fast, super physical. And obviously, I think I shared my three keys of the game before the game, Blake. And I didn't have anything to slow down Willie Jefferson or anything like that, which I would in this past because of how much Willie's and Willie is still a disruptor, but the pieces around him aren't what they were, especially without Jackson Jeffcoat, right? And a few other guys, Celestin Hava not being in there. They also have another guy that's in their rotation that I was listening to Bonfire Sports earlier today. Their pregame coverage for Winnipeg coming into the game, they were without another guy in their rotation. So Willie kind of lacking the running mates around him. I think is allowing the Lions to, they showed it a little bit on the broadcast, double team him when they can, really slow him down, not allow him to take over the game like he's used to. And I think that's a big time factor. And I think that was kind of the reason why I was like, well, they should be able to take care of the pass rush, right? If they can have some success running the ball, which they should, hopefully it's a good recipe for success for the Lions. They were able to do so today. So I'm going to give my game ball to the big guys, to the Hoggies up front, the offensive linemen who never get enough shine. And Blake, any other thoughts before we kind of wrap things up here tonight on the show?
No, I'm really hungry. So,
I
but
I
no,
agree, buddy.
in all seriousness, bring on Edmonton on Thursday night.
I agree. I cannot wait for that. And lastly, before we get out of here, a few things that we are looking forward to that I did put
Oh,
out on the here
wait. Sorry,
today.
there is one more thing I wanted to mention, Cole, quickly. So we were actually able to meet our friend and the current Guinness Book of World Record holder, Bobby DeBow, at the last BC Lions home game. I found out today that another friend of mine, Chris Tomovchuk, who is originally from Winnipeg, he currently resides in Ottawa, is trying to break Bobby's Guinness Book of World Record for visiting all 9 CFL stadiums in 15 days. And from what I've heard, he's trying to, if all things go according to plan, he will break Bobby's record by an hour and a half. He will be in BC for the Saskatchewan game on July the 13th. And he's doing all this to raise money for CFL Fans Fight Cancer. So that's a huge thing that's very close to my heart. So I know I'm going to. If any of our listeners have the ability, go check out his in his X, his Facebook, stuff like that. If you need to, I can send you the links. But please try and donate to Chris's attempt to break Bobby's record. Whatever happens, I'll be happy with whoever has the record.
Super cool, super cool. Big fan of Bobby when he did it. And hearing about that, I definitely have to. Well, one, catch up to you. I know you're chasing down all 9 stadiums, I believe. I want to do that, just not a world record fashion. I want to do that one day. Hopefully, attend a Lions game in all. I guess it is 8 opposing stadiums, 9 total, which I've done it in BC Place. Need to do it in the other 8. But to do it in 15 days or less is beyond bonkers to me. That's a lot of football, and would be super cool if I ever have the opportunity. Maybe Blake, one day we win the lottery. We're doing it, buddy. We're gonna do it in a weekend, though. We're gonna make sure we're seeing all 18s. No, jokes aside, super cool for both of them. Go support them. If anybody's wondering about the links, you can get at Blake on the CF underscore CF Fanatics Twitter page, or Blake at Blake 3653 on Twitter as well. He'll send you the links, and you guys will be able to donate and support. Sorry, what was your friend's name there in his journey?
Chris Tomovchuk.
Chris Tomovchuk in his journey to break the world record for most seen most games. Is it most games?
Yeah,
In
I think it's seeing a game in all 9 stadiums in the fastest amount of time or something like that.
Right. So we wish our friend luck in his world record breaking journey. So Blake, lastly, before we get out of here, for anybody in the BC area tuning in here tonight, you guys can check out my personal Twitter at Cole McGarvey, which I share the dates of the Grey Cup Tour in BC this coming summer, which will be starting, I believe, over there in the on the mainland, obviously, and then making their way over here to Vancouver Island throughout, I want to say it was July like 9th to 11th, and then coming back from 21st to like 24th, and then ending the trip in Victoria, obviously, for Labor Day weekend for Touchdown Pacific, August 29th to 31st. So go check out those dates on my personal Twitter. If you guys are in the BC area, go out and see the Grey Cup. Get your hands on the Grey Cup. I would imagine you're able to take a picture with it, see what it looks like in person, and maybe that inspires you to maybe buy some tickets, find some tickets while you can, maybe win some tickets while you're there, have some fun, and just enjoy the CFL being the CFL and Grey Cup being in Vancouver this upcoming year. So, Blake, before we get out of here, we will see you guys on Wednesday night for our CF Fanatics weekly show. But everybody that's tuning in, 54 of you guys, please head over to the YouTube, subscribe to the channel as we chase down 200 subscribers. That would be greatly appreciated by both Blake and I. Before I last checked, 192 total. So 8 more to go. Head over to our Twitter page as well at at underscore CF Fanatics on Twitter, at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram. You guys can find us and all our content on Twitter, on Instagram, as well as YouTube at Canadian Football Fanatics on there. Until then, we will see you guys next Wednesday night. And then, Blake, it is a double duty back-to-back shift. We'll see you guys on Thursday night next week. Until then, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of Canadian football this weekend. Blake, I will see you next Wednesday night, my friend.
Sounds good.